Streaming this on the web, so we want to welcome everyone who is watching us on the web, all 9 of you. How you doing? And we're also going to be recording this, so you'll be able to get the link for this and then share this with folks who aren't going to be here, because we're going to hopefully cover some really good stories for you today. So welcome. I also want to welcome our panel who's up here, who's going to talk to us about their experience using the web in education, but we're not going to introduce them right now. We'll get them later. So they're just like an audience member for us. They're sitting here. So I am happy to be here. My name is Jamie Castle, or Jaime Casap, depending on what language you speak. That's my standard joke. But I am not who's on the bill. Rajan Chef, who's our product manager for the Chrome team, couldn't be here, and I just happen to be here because, one, I'm speaking tomorrow morning for the 7:30 keynote, but also I just happen to be down at the Everglades doing my python hunting, and I got a couple of those, and then I came up here for this. Anyone catch a python yet? No? I guess they're just running around here. All right, so anyway, so I want to know who's in the audience. So how many teachers do we have in the audience? All right, cool. How many administrators, superintendents, tech directors, curriculum directors? All right, awesome. How many students? Any students? Sometimes we have some students. All right, cool. And then how many of you are from Florida? All right, how many of you are not from Florida? Wait, I think the same people raised their hand. What is it? The further south you drive to Florida, the further north you go? Right? All right, cool. So before we get started, I want to share this with you. For those of you who are using any kind of device, you're going to be using Google Moderator to kind of capture your questions. So we have, this is the address, it's goo.gl/L, capital D, capital Y, smaller C2. As we're talking today, you have questions, and as a panel discussing what their experience is, if you have specific questions, make sure that you use that to ask your questions, or you can go through the list of questions that people are asking and vote for those questions, and then they'll kind of rise to the top, and then we'll be able to address those questions at the end when we have a bunch of time to do Q&A. We'll also answer your live questions here in the audience as well, but this is a good way to kind of capture that wisdom of crowds, right? So if there are 1, 2, 3 questions that everybody's voting on that are key questions, we want to make sure that we're addressing those as we go. Cool? Everyone got that? All right, hopefully that's working for you guys. All right, so when we talk about what we're doing here today, we were here a year ago. And anyone came to our classroom, Chromebook classroom last year? Okay, cool. So about a year ago we were here, we were talking about Chromebooks, we were talking about the web, and this was kind of a new phenomenon. And I think what we're going to learn today, especially from our panel, is the idea of what's happened over the past year, not only in terms of education and technology, and not only in terms of the use of Chromebooks, but also the impact the web has had in education in lots of different ways. So we're really excited to talk about that. And just that year, a year ago, I was standing here, we were on the road doing these Chromebook classroom sessions, talking to people about using the web in education, and to be honest with you, got a lot of like blank stares, right, from folks that didn't understand what it was that we were talking about. And not that everyone got it, not that everyone didn't get it, but it was one of those things where we felt like we were at that verge, at that point. And I would say, and I think some of you would agree, in the last 12 months, you've seen an increase of the utilization of the web in education in ways that we couldn't even imagine, right? And so it's been exciting to see us go from this to where we were just getting started. We're about 100 schools or so. We're really catching on to being able to utilize the web, and we're buying these Chromebooks to put into their schools so that they can use the web as part of their learning environment. And today we're happy to announce that just in this last year, we've gone from a couple of hundred schools using it to more than 2,000 schools using Chromebooks in education. And that's very exciting for us because we're seeing this idea that it's not so much a theory anymore, but we're starting to see that the web is being utilized in education. We're starting to see the power and the potential of all the things that are out there and available to us, and we're starting to see that being utilized in education. As a matter of fact, and it's not just Chromebooks, it's the web, it's Google Apps for Education. How many Google Apps for Education users do we have? Yeah. Today, we also have a blog post by the CIO of Chicago Public Schools that's talking about how Chicago Public Schools is going to be using Google Apps for their teachers, their administrators, their staff, and their students. The third largest school district in the country. So this is, and we're just getting started. So we're at that point where we have 2,000 schools using Chromebooks in one way or another, and Google Apps in one way or the other, or other web apps in one way or the other. So this is the exciting part, exciting time. So when we talk about Chromebooks, and maybe not all of you are familiar with Chromebooks, I kind of want to do a year in review and what's happened over the last year. Because again, a year ago, this time, I was standing in front of you talking to you about this idea, this paradigm shift of how to utilize the web in education, and this Chromebook that helped us think about what that looked like, and that was a Samsung 5. Right? And this was a Chromebook that, when I talked about this, talked about how we had benefits for users, which were 8-second boot up time, an 8-hour battery life, easy to use, but for administrators, the ability to manage and scale these at rates that you couldn't even think about, because you could go from 5 to 50 to 500 to 5,000 to 50,000, all managed from one location. And this is the conversation that we were having a year ago. So we released the Chromebook, and then we released the Chromebook 550. So we made a faster version of the Chromebook. So we had that available for educators as well. And then in May, we released the Chromebox, which gave schools the opportunity to take some of the old equipment that they had, either monitors and keyboards and other things, and plug them into the box so that they can be using the Chrome operating system in their libraries or computer labs or other places. So we did that as well. And then in October, we released the Samsung Chromebook and the Acer machine at the same time. And the Acer and the Chromebook gave us a different price point for Chromebooks. And so you had the $250 Samsung machine and the $200 Acer machine. And just this month, we announced that Lenovo has joined our family, and Lenovo, for the first time in its ThinkPad history, was going to be releasing a non-Windows machine, and they released a Chrome OS ThinkPad. And all of a sudden now the family of machines that we have include these things, right? So now we have these machines, and these are all Chromebooks or the Chromebox, but it's the same operating system. So it doesn't matter if you're a school that has a version of this machine in your school, you're still using the same operating system. And that's just in the last year. So we're really excited about what we'll be talking about next year and the potential of how do we really utilize these tools in education. And so we're really, really excited about all these devices. Now the benefits, obviously, for teachers that we released in the last year, besides the ease of use of these machines because you're logging into the web, is we released the predetermined web apps that you can actually preload onto your machines by grade level, right? So there's a whole bunch more robust web applications that you can utilize in education, and so we released those as well. We also released versions of offline access to these, right? We got a lot of great feedback from educators about the use of web apps, but also being able to use them on an offline capacity. And so from a Google perspective, you're using Google tools in an offline way. So you're using Gmail offline and Calendar offline, and then this past year we released Docs offline so that you can actually edit documents offline and then sync them back online. I personally hate that feature because I spend a lot of time on airplanes, and I can no longer sit there and watch movies. I actually have to do work now because I don't have an excuse. So, but that's a personal problem. I'm okay with that. I'll deal with that. But that's where we are now with the apps. And then for administrators, and also from an assessment capacity, we released the ability to do assessments on these Chromebooks. And I want to make sure that I get this specific because this was critical, and one of the things that we got a lot of feedback on was making sure that we can do assessments. And so hang on one second. So the PARC and the Smarter Balance assessment consortia confirmed the Chromebooks met the hardware and operating systems, and then in December, the AIR announced that it will support Chromebooks as a secure assessment device. So, and we continually are working with assessment providers to make sure that you can use the Chromebook in the classroom, but also use it for doing assessments. And these are all the things that we were able to do in just the past year. And obviously for districts, the ability to manage these devices is what really the benefit is. Right? So you have the user end benefits where the Chromebook becomes part of your learning environment. It becomes an invisible tool in the classroom that you can use in the support and the enabling of the things that you want to teach in the classroom. But from an administrator's perspective, how you do that becomes critical. How you manage, how you support that becomes critical. And so for us, giving you the management capabilities and the tools that you have at your disposal are critical. So we were able to release the Chromebook with a whole set of management capabilities. And in the past year, we released a whole bunch of other management capabilities. And I'm going to ask the panel about that in terms of what the impact of those management capabilities meant and how they run their school districts with Chromebooks. And obviously, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did was that we would try to make them affordable. And so if you notice that picture of those different Chromebooks that we have, those come at different price points, and they're all different types of machines, and you get different things for that value, and we can talk about that. But the point is that we want to make sure that they were affordable and that they were easy to manage and scale. And we actually have some information about how they were able to. We did a study with an organization that gave us some feedback on what the cost was to manage and scale Chromebooks. And so we were really happy with the cost benefit per unit of what you were putting into your school. So it made it absolutely essential to make sure that you can actually manage and afford. You can afford to manage these Chromebooks in your school system. And so one of my favorite things that we did in the past year was we kind of connected with Donors Choose, great organization. Are you guys familiar with this program, obviously? And we were able to support a bunch of projects that teachers at the front end wanted to have Chromebook support for. Anybody actually put a project in on there for Chromebooks? No? Okay, so there were, what we found, what was interesting about this experience was we set this up, we put this online, and that day, within the day, we had to shut down the program because of so many requests that were coming in for projects from teachers. So we're really excited about that. My wife has personally blocked the URL to Donors Choose because she doesn't want me to continue to fund all these different programs. So if you find yourself looking for programs that you can support maybe here in Florida, take a look at Donors Choose, look for Chromebooks, projects that are out there. There's some interesting, some really good stories out there. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is how do we bring the web to students? And when we think about students, it really comes down to the fact that, all of us who, have, your own kids versus other people's kids, but, if you have your own kids and you think about how they're living, our kids are living on the web, right? I think about my 11-year-old who doesn't know that the world existed before Google, or the fact that he lives on the web, and then he's got to go to school and unplug from the web, right? And it doesn't make any sense to him. And now, for our students that are using Chromebooks, there's no aha moment for them. They go to school, they turn on their Chromebooks, and they start using their Chromebooks because they're used to living on the web already, and they're used to learning and living on the web, and this just becomes a seamless transition for them. There's nothing to learn because they already know how to use the web. So that's really exciting for us from that. And I want to be able to share this one particular video before you hit click on that, Becky. One of the things that we did in the past year is I got to travel around the country and visit lots of schools and lots of classrooms. And this was one particular great story from a teacher that she shared this with us. She sent us an email and told us the story, and we were so overwhelmed by the story that we got a crew out there and filmed it, and we wanted to share this one story of how the web and Chromebook impacts learning in ways that sometimes we don't think about. So I want to share that.
Malachi was a toddler. He did not talk. He didn't start talking until probably around 3 or 4.
He's thought of himself as not able to read, not able to write, not able to play sports. And I think he's told himself that so long that he really believes it. So he would go off into his little dream world
Now, this is my room. And it looks like a giant superhero city, really. You can make any kind of superhero, so I thought, why not if I was a superhero? So I made a superhero story about myself. Origin of a real hero. Hi, my name is Malachi. I'm a hero.
He has a lot of ideas. He's very creative. Malachi just has a very hard time getting his thoughts on paper. The whole writing mechanics is difficult for him.
It would take him an entire hour to write one sentence. Malachi's writing is horrendous. His skill in actually writing the letters on the page really got in the way of him doing the work. That was where the problem was.
So the computer was the best option for him. Last year we used a mini laptop. It was about that big. It took Malachi's generally about 5 minutes to turn on. By the time he got it turned on and started working on things, his frustration level was really high. He had difficulty knowing how to save it, so 90% of the time he would not complete an assignment. In August, we got our set of Chromebooks. When we opened the Chromebook and it turned on, the kids were in shock. They were like, what? No 5 minutes? When Malachi got into the settings and found out how to change the icon on his login screen, I was just flabbergasted. When he types a document, he knows it's saved and it's done. He had never been able to do that before. I really don't know what the difference was. I think it has something to do with the speed. He didn't get frustrated. The Chromebook browser is structured in a way that in his head he understands it.
For somebody who I had prodded to write one sentence in an entire hour, wow, in 5 minutes he had a sentence done. He typed some more. Wow, he had 2 sentences done. I was telling everybody. Malachi got 3 paragraphs written.
From then on, it never stopped. He just went. I asked the students to write an essay. Once Malachi understood what I was asking him to do, he wrote 4.5 paragraphs of personal best for Malachi. I read it at home on my computer and cried because I couldn't believe that he had accomplished that much, knowing where he has come from.
Sometimes the ending is really hard for everyone to see what will happen to Malachi at the ending. But all I know for the ending is that my character Malachi will live his happy life in Superhero City. Yeah.
So we wanted to share that story because it's just a snapshot into how kids learn, and obviously all kids learn in different ways, but it's a great picture into a world that sometimes we don't even understand. Like, for example, I remember the first time I watched that video, I don't even think about the fact that when you're in a Google Doc, that you don't have to save it or put it somewhere, right? It's just one of those things that you don't even think about, and because you're just used to working in that space. So that was one example of that. So what I want to be able to do now is I'm going to bring up my teammate Tia, who's going to come up and help monitor the panel that we have. And I want to hear other stories like this, and I want to hear what their experience was like in the past year, what they've been able to do with the web in their classroom, with the Chromebooks, and how they've been able to manage and scale them in the instance. So you ready to go? And this is Tia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tia Lendo, and I'm from the Google Education team. And I'm pleased to get started by finally introducing the people who've been sat here on the stage. Thank you for waiting patiently. And I'm really excited because the panel that we have has a real variety of experiences. So we try to ask a diverse group. We've got somebody joining us on the Hangout from up in Chicago, where apparently yesterday it was 70 degrees and today it's about 10 degrees. So hopefully they'll be all bundled up, and we'll get Jason up there in a minute. But I'll start with introducing the folks who are here in the room today. We'll start over here with Donna Toiber. And Donna is a Technology Integrations Coordinator from Richland School District 2. If any of you have heard some of the webinars we've done or been at some other conferences, you may have seen Donna and some of her colleagues presenting because they've had a long journey with learning on the web, which they'll share today. Then we've got a double act here who's joined us from Shore Regional School District in New Jersey, not too far from New York City, where I'm based. Got Michael Vaccarino with us, and also Bruce Preston. And what's exciting is we've got both the technology and the curriculum view from both of you. And then Claudia Edwards is right here on my left, and she's also joined us from South Carolina. Thanks for being here. And she's the Deputy Superintendent of Academics. See some pictures of her folks working. And then we are going to hear from Jason Markey and one of his students, Jesse. Jason is the principal of East Leiden High School in East Leiden High School District 212, which is right by O'Hare Airport in Chicago. And he'll be joining us in a little bit near the end of the panel. We'll start with the folks who are in the room today. Great. So actually, I wanted to start just by asking each of the panel members if they could please tell us, firstly, a little bit more about your district and your schools, just to paint the picture for everybody. And then secondly, if you could tell when your journey with web-based tools started, whether it was Google or otherwise. So Donna, do you want to start off?
Sure. I'm Donna Toyner, and I'm in Richland School District 2 in Columbia, South Carolina. We have over 26,000 students and 39 schools and centers in our district. We've been working towards the cloud, I think, for the last 5 years or so. We're actually at the end of our 5-year plan, which we'll talk about more. But we have, I had the honor as an instructional technology specialist at a high school in my district to go to the Google Teacher Academy and get all that googly love in 2009. And I came back and I thought, we can do Google Apps for Education at my high school. And so we did that in 2009, and then I helped other high schools get on board with Google Apps for Education. Then I was lucky enough to get this new position, and we moved our middle school students into a pilot with Google Apps for Education. Then finally, our one-to-one initiative came to fruition after about 10 years of piloting one-to-one classrooms. We decided it was time to go district-wide, and so we now have over 14,000 Chromebooks in our district, as well as some other devices, but our predominant one-to-one device now is the Chromebook. So we are in the clouds, and it's been a really exciting year.
Thank you. Mike and Bruce, when did you all get started with learning on the web?
We started in 2008 as well. We first started out on the technical side, just to move away from failing exchange server, which is where our full apps education template. And ever since then, we've been working more and more towards sending through the web support and also our administrator just back in the day.
As a description of our district, we're actually a very small district, especially compared to some of the other years. We're a single high school is our district, and we have about 680 students there. But we're fed by 3 other districts. So from a curriculum standpoint, I'm shared with all 4 districts. So we're trying to create a common language and a common culture about instruction and learning between 4 very distinctly different districts has been quite a challenge. I came on having a lot of familiarity with Exchange and really sort of begging Mike to bring that forward into our district for collaborative purposes. Mike was adamant about not doing that. Stay with Google. It really worked for us. And,
we are going to have some drama here between Bruce and Mike today, hopefully.
Later we'll talk about sort of, I think we were talking about it last night, sort of rehashing the last-ditch attempt that I had to hang on to hope that maybe it would move. I just couldn't compete. My idea of Google really has transformed a lot of the work that we've done in our building, not just from a learning perspective, but even from the fluidity of the management of our building. It's really transformed how we operate, and then between our 4 districts, really transformed the way we operate and do our collaborative work.
Great, thank you. And Claudia, you're working in a district of 10 schools, I believe. Could you tell us a little bit more about the district and also when you started coming to the web?
Well, our district is we have, as she said, we have about 10 schools, and we have a little under 3,000 students. And our school district is very small and very rural, and we have a very high free and reduced lunch. About 85% of our students are free and reduced lunch. And one of our goals with this initiative was that we wanted to ensure that we close that digital divide or that gap that existed between our students. Because when our students go home, typically they don't have access to the internet. So we wanted what they experienced in the school to reflect what they will experience when they go out in the real world. So that was one of the reasons why we started this initiative. And I think one of the unique perspectives, that we bring, or I bring from my perspective, is the fact that I started my journey here last year. And I was sitting in the same seat that you're sitting in now, and I wanted to do something that was going to truly ignite learning for my students, and to really get them coming into our classroom saying, wow, I'm here, what do you want to do today? Because when you're using Google Apps, it's important to realize that the world is their gateway. And Google allows them the opportunity to have that gateway to do anything that they want to do from their classroom. So that's one of the unique benefits that Google Apps has, in the fact that it's affordable. And many of the things are free. So I think with those things in mind, from my leadership perspective, it was important for me to bring those types of tools to our students.
And now we'll go over and introduce Jason Markey, and I believe Jesse is there with him, one of the students at East Leiden High School. Jason was here live in person 1 year ago. Luckily now, because we've got the Google Plus Hangouts up there, Jason and Jesse can join us virtually. Jason and Jesse, if you wouldn't mind telling us just a little bit more about your school and district, just to paint the picture for folks here, and then where you are on your journey with the web.
Sure, thanks, Tia. Again, my name is Jason Markey. I'm principal at East Leiden High School, one of our two high schools in our district. We have about 3,500 students between the two schools, right outside of suburban Chicago. And I guess since last year when we were there, we had determined at that point we were going to move into this year as a one-to-one high school. So all 3,500 of our students at the beginning of this year were given a Chromebook and assigned to them just like a textbook always had been. So they take the device home with them, so we're a true or completely a one-to-one environment. And as we were moving into it, we had a vision and obviously some goals that we had in mind, and it's been interesting to see those things play out and begin to evolve over time. So just to touch on a few of those things that we looked at last year, maybe say a thing or two about what we're seeing this year. To start with, one of the phrases that we've hung on to is that we really want to be preparing our students for their future, not our past. And I think that's important in education. A lot of times we continue to do things because we know that we went through the educational system and we turned out okay, and we think that should be good for the rest of our students that are coming through. But I think as we realize how much the web is changing our world, and I know I'm sure Jamie talked about that earlier, what we really realize is that is the future. The future that our students are going to be interacting with is certainly, it's very important that they're used to interacting in person, but it's just as important that they understand the possibilities of the internet. And so that kind of takes me to my next point. One of the biggest things that we wanted to look at is creating new opportunities for our students. And again, when you look at kind of choosing the web as your platform for learning, some of those opportunities I think are very dynamic. It can't really be replicated in the classroom. And we've seen those things start to happen. So, something as simple as the Google Doc being able to be published in public online, or being shared with a teacher. There's a big difference, and I talked about this a little bit last year, but we're really seeing it this year. There's a tremendous difference between a teacher and a student having a conversation ongoing in the comment section of a Google Doc, as opposed to a student handing that paper in and waiting to get those red marks back 3 or 4 or 5 days later. That's an ongoing conversation feedback, which is certainly one of the most essential things when we talk about learning. And when you push that to the web and you make it truly a collaborative in nature and a conversation, then I think the learning can take on a much more, again, dynamic feel. And then, a quote that we really like from Alec Pearls is, we want the opportunity to not only do things differently, but to truly do different things. I think we're finding this year our students are able to do different things than maybe they couldn't before in our class, and certainly Jesse will talk about some of those things with our TSI class and some of the other opportunities we have a little bit later as we go through some questions.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jason and Jesse. Now what we're going to do now is I'm going to start by posing a bunch of questions to the panel, but I'd love for you all to be populating your questions as well in Google Moderator. So if on the screen at the right, Becky, I don't know if we could bring back up the the slide number 2 that shows people the address for Google Moderator. But you just type that right into the URL, and then you can go on there to submit your questions or to vote for the questions that you really like. There it is. So it's case sensitive, lowercase goo.gl / the number 9, capital DY, little c, and then the number 2. So if you go there, and it is case sensitive, you can type your questions in and vote on them. So like I said, I'll get the questions started, and all of those of you who are watching here in the audience or on the live stream at home or at your schools, please do type your questions in there. And we're going to come back to Jason and Jesse in just a little bit. But I wanted to start off, Bruce, I saw you shaking your head when we were watching the Malachi video. And one thing that you and Mike and I were talking about earlier was that there were certain things that you had hoped for from the web-based tools at the point you decided to move there. And then there's been other impacts you've seen since. And Mike, could you talk about what you had hoped to see, and then you and Bruce a little bit about what the impact has been and whether that's met your expectations?
Well, when we first started out, it was to cut costs. Cut costs on our email archiving, just moving away from the hardware platform. And then, moving towards Google Apps with the Rossini archiving, cutting more costs. And from there, that's what drew us in, was the Gmail portion of it. But then when we started realizing all these other web-based tools came along with it, it was a win-win. And it was just a little bit of a road to travel to get everybody used to these new tools, but it's self-explanatory. It's not really hard to use once you get up and running with them.
I think it was really important to me coming into the district. Mike had already been there. It was really important to me to find ways to connect people and collaborate. So again, we're a small district or a set of districts, but everybody's in their own space with their own set of board policies about travel, et cetera, and release time. So anything that I would get approved to do any type of release time had to be approved through 4 different boards, 4 different associations, et cetera. So if I could overcome the obstacles of time and space by some sort of collaborative app, so much the better. And again, through working with Mike, we were able to really refine what we were doing and use the Google Apps for education to connect educators. So we did curriculum writing over the summer. We did via very distant places. Some people got the good end of the deal and were able to chime in from luxurious resorts, and other people were stuck at home. But everybody was able to do their work. From there, some of the other benefits now, as that continued to tip from our management of the building into the actual instructional capacity of the teachers, some of the real fringe benefits, actually, I wouldn't even call them fringe at this point, but the direct benefits for students, we're really seeing just the amount of inquiry that any student can do, which is so critical for a 21st century student or a 21st century citizen, to have a level of inquiry. So if there's a question out there, the student doesn't have to wait to get the answer, or doesn't have to even rely on the knowledge base of the teacher. They can just jump right in for any sort of inquiry with the device in front of them. From a perspective, the reason I was nodding my head at Malachis Story is from our own, so I was a special ed teacher in the classroom, and realized very early on that if I could take my students who generally suffered from massive amounts of disorganization and allow them to use the web to organize themselves, send themselves at that point, just send a text to yourself or to an email for yourself about what your assignments were and check that before you went home. We had to overcome obstacles about using cell phones in school, whereas now students are able to set up their own calendars and keep themselves organized and know they just put it right in there, or they just get it from the teacher. The teacher pushes out from their calendar right to the students, and then the students know what the assignment is. From a monitoring of student progress as a special needs teacher, say in an inclusive setting, a lot of times you end up with that hovering model, where I'm hovering over a student, and you really sort of shout out the student and their needs when you do that hovering. Well, with the Google Docs feature, a student can be working on an essay or a project, they can be collaborating on a project, and I can be monitoring that remotely if they share that doc with me. So I don't have to hover now. That it gives that student that opportunity to be a little bit more independent, but I can still guide and direct and refocus their attention or their progress by just making a simple comment. So we don't have to have the physical hovering anymore. And then another piece that we've seen, we were just talking with a teacher before we left. I was talking with him on Friday. Some teachers are really worried about disengagement So the device is in front of them. How do we know they're not playing solitaire or some other sort of online game? And what we're finding, what we're starting to find is that while some students may disengage, they disengage singularly. They don't take the whole class with them. You know, they might just disengage, but it's their disengagement only. You grab them back on and they're good to go. So it's really been a lot of benefits to our students in terms of also individual pacing. So it really allows for a lot of differentiation and individualized learning to occur.
And the Chromebook specifically, what it's done is taken a lot of the distractions out of the classroom too. So when the students come into the classroom, grab a Chromebook, turn it on, and go. You know, there's no more of the distraction of boot up time and everything else. So where did I save
my
it?
backpack to find all my stuff.
Loading my file. Can you upload this for me?
Right.
All there.
Right. And Mike, you mentioned earlier about things being easy to use. I know, Claudia, when we were talking, you said that you don't have a massive tech team, et cetera, in your district. Could you talk a little bit more about what was that getting started process like? You're quite early in on the journey. What did it take to kind of get everything started with the pilot?
One of the unique things is that the fact that my technology department is made of about 5 people. Okay? And with that in mind, when they saw the FedEx truck come in and they wanted to help us actually deploy the Chromebooks, but what was the most empowering thing was the fact that my team and I, we were able to unbox the Chromebooks. We were able to set them up ourselves. And the technology director came to my office and said, "Do you all need our help?" And I could tell them, "No, we don't." And for me, that was empowering, but it was also empowering to my staff because we took ownership of this deployment of the Chromebooks. And that is one of the biggest selling factors for me was the fact that I took them out of the box, I powered them up, our Wi-Fi connectivity was already preloaded from the factory. So basically it was an out-of-box experience. And that was one of the things that I really, truly value about this experience with the Google Chromebooks.
I saw one of the questions is in the moderator, which a few people had, which was about, could you talk about student and teacher privacy? And I'll turn to Donna for this one. As Donna mentioned, over 14,000 Chromebooks, almost fully one-to-one everywhere, I think including going into some of the lower grades, some of the 4th and 3rd graders. So could you talk a little bit about student and teacher privacy?
Yes, and I know we get a lot of questions from other educators about SIPA and COPA and what are the privacy guidelines, your children 13 and under, what can we expect? We do have a responsible use procedure form that we send home, and we have a letter about Google Apps for Education and how the students will have accounts and they will be able to use those accounts to get access to some of the other Web 2.0 resources. So we get parent signatures for all of that. We also have, with Google Apps, what's so fantastic is that our teachers can reset a student password if they need to go in and check on something. We've also just started using the Hapara teacher dashboard. So, at this moment in time, I can check the Gmail account of any student. I can look at the work that they're doing. The principal can give great feedback to students about the work that they're creating. So it really is having this nice environment where we can control it, as opposed to having our kids on devices going to their whatever account, logging in, finding other ways to chat, finding other ways to get around the system. Our kids are part of the system, and they understand that it's work-related, that they're learning about internet safety, and they're learning about creating work that is going to be for an audience, and about doing that consistently and making sure that it's professional. So I, would be happy to talk with anyone about that, because we do get a lot of questions, how can you do that?
Yeah, and across the suite of Google tools, sharing, I think, is one of the things, being an ex-teacher myself, that I look at these tools and I think, my goodness, I wish I had these in my classroom. And of course, they weren't invented yet when I was teaching a few years ago. But, we had a Littleton school district, and they've gone Google, and we had some of the 5th graders there in Miss Christie's class who did a webinar. And they took all the Q&A, actually, from the audience. And the next day, I got an email from Miss Christie, and she said, my class has been posting to their class blog. And so I was able to write a post back to every single kid in the class, which I would have never been able to do before that existed. And she approved my response first. She was able to make sure that she knew who I was, and then she allowed that to be published there. It was just such an amazing way to be able to feel really close to those students, even though they were across the country in Colorado. Now, Donna, we mentioned the size of the deployment there. You all are also, more than a year into it, and as part of that, you've been trying to really reflect on, what are those implementation factors that help one-to-ones go well, particularly through Project Red. So could you tell us a little bit about what that has taught you all?
Yes, we were very excited. We applied to be a Project Red signature district this year, so we're one of 20 districts chosen by Project Red to work with their team to implement with quality. We also have an evaluation team that we work with to make sure that we're continuously evaluating what we're doing so that we're moving forward, because we want to see student achievement increase. We want to see cost savings, and we want to see our students engaged and having those 21st century skills. Project Red has some key implementation factors, and it's just amazing how Google Apps for Education and the Chromebooks fit right in, and we have great examples for each of those things. But having teachers use online formative assessments on a regular basis, having students collaborating online daily, what better way than through Google Docs? Having students use technology in intervention classes and the core content areas, so we're doing a lot of project-based learning and flipping the curriculum. Also having students participate in virtual field trips. We've got Hangouts now, and our students don't actually have access to the Hangouts yet, but our teachers can start a Hangout out with experts or with authors to have a book talk. So we've got that ability. The list just goes on and on, how the resources that we now have are helping us to bring about increase in student achievement, and we are monitoring that, and we have a lot of evaluation tools in place to make sure that we are implementing with quality, and our schools are really taking ownership of that.
And what have you done, Donna, in terms of, obviously, you started with pilots and probably people who are more excited to try the tools, but now it's getting rolled out to everybody, and everybody has a different pace of their own learning, teachers and students alike. What have you put in place to help people advance along and get really comfortable with the tools?
Yes, we're moving into phase 3 in August, so we'll be completely one-to-one, not all going home, but in our elementary and middle schools we'll have the middle schools, the kids carry them with them all day, and then our high schools have already started with 2 high schools that are taking Chromebooks home this year. So you can imagine in 1 year's time having high school teachers, I was a high school person, having over 100 teachers in a school, all of a sudden their kids are empowered with this tool. They bring it from home. They have access to all these resources 24/7. And so it's really a significant shift. We're having to do a lot of professional learning and provide that in many ways as possible. We have school instructional technology specialists who provide sessions, and we have collaboration times, and we have district level sessions. We've had a Midland Summit last year, which we're planning to repeat this year. So the professional learning has been incredibly exciting, and the other exciting part is that we have a technology leadership series this year. So every month our principals and assistant principals have an opportunity to come to the leadership series and learn about these key implementation factors and how they can model that using some of the tools that we're providing to their teachers. So they're becoming the leaders in their schools. So we're scaling up that way, and it's been very exciting to see it catch on and to see it go from this district initiative to these school-based initiatives where we really have an evolution taking place.
Thanks. And I know, Claudia, you all, I think, are just a few weeks or a week or so into the 7th graders who are doing one-to-one. Could you tell us more about how you decided to hone in on that audience and what you set up, whether or not they're taking the Chromebooks home with them, etc.?
A couple weeks ago, we decided with our superintendent's vision, he wanted to start a STEM early college academy. And this is a college academy where students will have the opportunity, by the time they graduate, to graduate with not only a high school diploma, but also graduate with an associate degree. But we also wanted to have a technology component. So the technology component that we added was the Google Chromebook. And as I said earlier, we wanted to ensure that the digital divide that exists between our students from the school to home was closed. So we purchased some Chromebooks that already had 3G as a part of the hardware. And this decision was made because we wanted to make sure that when the students went home, they could easily access the internet without any problem. Now, one of the things, and I'm looking at some of your faces, some of you are thinking like, oh my God, they sent them home. One of the things that was a condition of us sending us home was the fact that the parents had to come and actually participate in a training session. In that training session, they had to sign saying that they knew that if it showed up broken or accidentally broken, that they would be responsible for that Chromebook. And believe it or not, many of the parents took ownership of that Chromebook along with the student. And then on the flip side, the student also had to sign an agreement stating that they would follow all rules or expectations as it relates to digital citizenship to ensure that there would be no cyberbullying. They wouldn't use this new device as a tool that was not clearly outlined in our handbook. And I can tell you that overall, and we've only been 2 weeks into this particular initiative, but I can tell you with the feedback that I've got from my staff, along with just seeing the students and the ownership that these students felt, because they're the only students, and it's about 24, 25 of these students who will be taking these Chromebooks home. And we brought them a very, very protective, a very good case. We gave them each a set of headphones or earbuds. We don't say headphones anymore, do we? Earbuds. And we, because again, we wanted that opportunity for them to have ownership with this Google Chromebook. And I can tell you also that the teacher who is their teacher leader in this particular initiative is using Edmodo as the main tool to communicate with these students. So again, we're putting the onus back on the student to have ownership in taking care of the Chromebook, but then the teacher is acting as more of a facilitator. They're posting assignments, they're actually responding to discussion posts and things of that nature. So we've found thus far, even though it's only been 2 to 3 weeks, that the Chromebook itself has been a very valuable tool for this new initiative.
And this idea of anytime, anywhere learning is something that a lot of schools ask us about. And I know it's something, Bruce and Mike, that you've seen, whether it's in terms of opening up the learning for things like in-school suspension maybe, which our time is being used more productively, or at home, or even recently I know when the school day was really interrupted a whole week actually by Superstorm Sandy. So could you tell us a little bit more about how you're able to use the tools for anytime, anywhere learning?
Yeah, with a particular case of in-school suspension, now we give the student who's in school suspension a Chromebook, and while their class is going on, they can still participate in the doc while their classmates are working or not suspended in class, and they're able to not be left out, and they can continue working like if they are in class. There's a couple other instances where some teachers have made offline hours or after hours, and they've been available to work with students on their essays or homework while the kids are at home, and they're in their house and they're just chatting in the dock, correcting comments, resolving comments.
And typically, in-school suspension or even out-of-school suspension is sort of not much, from a discipline standpoint, a learning standpoint, it's really not much of a deterrent for a student because you're sort of getting out of class and if you're getting suspensions, especially on a regular basis, you're not likely to do the work anyway. So you're not going to make it up and you get a day off, so to speak. So now they're actually responsible for that work. They really can't lose track. So it's easier to now stay in class. So it is a bit of a deterrent in terms of discipline. We're also finding in some cases that students are so engaged with the material, they might be absent from school, but they know what time their group in algebra class is going to be doing their work, and they'll chime in from home. All of a sudden you'll just see a student's name pop up. I'm here. And they're there from home, but they're still participating, so you're not losing ground.
And that's without them taking the Chromebook home. Right. That's the beauty of Chrome OS, is that they don't have the Chromebook at home, but they have Chrome OS, and they're still able to work on that document.
You want to talk about the Sandy?
Which we went through Superstorm Sandy, and with Google Docs, we were able to manage and keep track of our donations and other families that were in need, what supplies we had, and what was available, what was needed, all through Google Sheets.
We had something like 86 families that were displaced out of Superstorm Sandy. Some of them were displaced pretty far away from the school. So you can imagine, if this was sort of pen and paper merging documents for who needs what, where do they need it, how do we get it to them, that would be, there would be such potential for mistakes to occur. We didn't have any of that because everything was merged into one spot automatically. It's one of the great features. So we were able to increase our relief efforts for our local families and some of our local teachers as well who were displaced.
And have things improved up there for you all? It's a little off topic, but we know that there's still a lot of help that's needed.
A lot of work.
People's help is certainly welcome in the Northern. Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to come to Jason and Jesse in just a minute, but Don, I wanted to turn to you because, although we've talked about some pilots that are a few weeks or a few months in, y'all have been going for a while, and I guess I'd love you just to kind of reflect a little bit and say, what were the key, maybe one or two things that you did to really make this implementation of one-to-one successful that you'd really recommend that folks in the audience go away and think about as they're thinking about going one-to-one or towards one-to-one?
Well, the key thing, and I've been saying it all year, is why do you want to do it? Know why you want to do it. Start with your stakeholders. Bring them all together. It can be kind of messy, and I've kind of enjoyed, now that we're past some of that, watching others going through the process, because it's always an interesting process when you bring all the stakeholders together and start talking about what it is you really want to do through a one-to-one initiative. And you have a lot of perspectives, but I would say that's the most important thing. Come together in a room, come together another time, come together and fight, come together and finally come together. And I think because you put a good process in place, you will get to where you want to be. And I was on a call the other week with some folks who are in the middle of their one-to-one initiatives, and the question was, what keeps you up at night? And I thought, you know what? I'm sleeping now. So a year later, I'm actually sleeping, but it's because in our district we wanted to do the right thing for the right reasons. And so we had a lot of discussions, and we got stakeholder buy-in, and we're continuing, on. But once you make that decision, why you want to do it, then it's a lot easier to move forward with how you want to do it. And the device question, it sort of takes a back seat, because what it is it's the learning, and that's what you want to see. A year in, I want to go in classrooms, and I certainly don't want to have any conversation about the device in front of you. Or, I just want to see kids working and kids collaborating and kids working on creative projects. And that's what we're doing now. We're seeing it. So we're going in classrooms, we're seeing kids blogging, and we're seeing kids reflecting and creating e-portfolios and sharing with each other. And we're seeing teachers do that too, which is also just so great. It's so great that everyone now has moved past the initial, getting the equipment and the infrastructure. It's important, definitely, but know what you want and know why you want it, and then have those conversations. And I think that you'll be very pleased in a year, and you'll sleep, and it'll be great.
And I think, it's not an accident that all of you have mentioned, not just the technology teams leading these things, but the instructional leaders, the teachers, the students becoming leaders too. And so I want to turn to Jason and Jesse, who are up in Chicago. And particularly in the opening, you mentioned the student role there, Jason. And from Jesse, we'd love to hear a little bit more about the TSI initiative that you mentioned. If you could tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Well, so TSI is our tech support internship class, where students basically are the front line to help other students with technological problems that come up during schooling. And not only do we help kids with their Chromebook problems, but teachers with their laptop problems. And with TSI class, we're really able to spread out our knowledge on how we can operate efficiently with Chromebooks and with the technology that we have now. We currently operate to help fix Chromebook issues, like you can't connect to the internet, the screen's acting up, we need to fix it. And we also have this new student welcome class where the new students who are new to the district, they come in and we teach them how to use a Chromebook, how they can access Google Docs, Google Calendar, how they can use all of the tools that we have, and how they can take advantage of it.
That's great. And tell me, how did you personally get involved in this internship program, and what sorts of things do you all do to prepare to help people, or is it a lot of learning on the job?
Well, personally for me, I had a little bit of background knowledge on the whole Chromebook thing because last year the school was piloting out Chromebooks so you have to work in the school or not. And I was fortunate enough to be in one of the classes where they had the Chromebooks there for students to use. So that was in my history class. So then my whole class got used to like messing around with the Chromebook, getting to know how to use it, how we can use it to actually learn with it. And that was last year. And then this past summer, I interned technology department at the school, and I was basically there helping the tech department set up how we were going to carry out this TSI class. So as an intern in the technology department, I helped the tech department and administrators create like modules, create ways where we could effectively work to make sure that we be successful with the Chromebook thing. And yeah, for the new TSI students, what we did was we created a boot camp session during the summer before our school started, where TSI students would come in and we basically taught them everything that they needed to know about how they could fix Chromebooks and how they could make sure that everything works the way it's supposed to. And then from there, students were able to see what it was, how the problems come up firsthand, and they could experiment with it and they could try it out for themselves. Because, like, for me, I think the best way for us to learn how we can fix things is to try it out ourselves and figure out ways that we know work for us. It's not one way it works for everybody, there's like multiple ways to do everything. So with the whole TSI, it's like students know a way to fix the Chromebooks and everything. They can also experiment and try out different things.
That's great. It sounds like so you're not just doing the troubleshooting or reacting, you're actually thinking about proactively what sorts of trainings and preparation can we give people. I feel like you might be taking my job at Google soon, but that's okay. So you were one of the students who was in the pilot then last year, and now you've seen Chromebooks and a lot of the web apps, learning on the web, which I'm sure Jason will talk about later, being rolled out across the school. I mean, what would you say for you has been the biggest difference now that there are more web-based tools and that there is one-to-one computing?
The biggest thing that has really made a positive impact for me as a student is being able to collaborate with other students instantly. Because I know before, I can't even remember what it was like to work with my friends on a project in school. We always have to call each other up. We have to go to each other's house. We have to figure out a way. We have to physically come together to work on this project. And now with the whole Chromebooks and Google Docs, it's like I can be in my house doing what I'm doing from home, and then I can just share the Google Doc with my fellow students, and they can work on it, and we can all work on it together at the same time from different places. I mean, just that alone has made the biggest impact for me, and I can see it in other students too, because all the teachers take advantage of it as well. They can collaborate with the students, instant feedback, and it's so much more useful.
Great, thank you. And it'd be great if, I don't know if Jason's still there, if he just let you run the school now. Oh, he's still there, okay. Principal for a day. Well, I guess I'd ask you the same question, Jason. Reflecting back about what you anticipated before and where you are now, what are the biggest differences that you've seen from the web-based tools?
I think, kind of really piggybacking off what Jesse said, I think people realizing with these new opportunities, and each day we see teachers and students approach things probably differently than they would before. So just in the past couple of weeks in classes that I've been in where I've seen this, just this last week actually, I was in a geometry classroom in our ESL program. So these are students just learning the language at varying degrees. And one of the things, especially in math class, we always try to get our students to do is kind of use math language when we're speaking in class. Well, that's a difficult task for students that are just learning the English language and then learning those math concepts on top of that. So one of the things that I thought I was really kind of blown away by what the teacher did, because she's been having them struggle a little bit initially talking about concepts before they really feel good and confident about them. So what she did, she actually divided the class in half and paired them with another partner. And one partner had an image of a geometric shape on their Chromebook, some form of parallelogram. And the other partner just had a Google Doc that was shared with the other person. And what the partner with the image had to do was, using their theorems and their specific properties of these parallelograms and geometric shapes, had to give them one characteristic at a time. And then the other partner could either ask a question or they could start to draw the shape until they understood what it was. And what it allowed them to do, I think, and the teacher and I, after I observed it, we talked about it, and she said, they engaged in more of a conversation. than they would normally if they worked together. Now, she still wants them to talk, and obviously speaking is the most important thing they can eventually do, but this helped them build confidence, and they were more free in trying some things when it was typing into the computer, even though they knew their partner was seeing it and could give them some feedback. And then the other thing that did, it allowed the teacher also to have an archive of that conversation. So she could see when there was a communication breakdown or there was a breakdown in the understanding of the mathematical concepts that they were looking at. So I thought that was really interesting, and it's just another way that teachers are kind of adapting to this on the fly.
And I know that you've really, of course, left it up to the educators to decide, which sorts of curricular tools they want to use in terms of websites, web applications, textbooks, etc. What are some of the web apps or the web applications that you've seen people using that you might recommend to folks here and watching the live stream to check out?
Sure. I mean, beyond, obviously, Google Apps is central to everything we do, so Docs being the tool that primarily everyone is using. And before you start to look at all the other tools, I really do encourage people to look at what's in the suite of Google Apps, because it is something you have to be cognizant of as far as how much you start to reach out and you start to just grab things as they appear, and it can be confusing to students at times. That's one discussion we've been having is, how do we tie these things together? Do we need to bring some more uniformity to what we're doing for the sake of our students so they understand what's going on in classes? So I really encourage people to get to know Google Apps as much as possible, because there are things you can do in Google Forms and within Google Docs that people might not realize do quick assessments, informative assessments that they might be using other applications for. But beyond that, certainly our teachers are really focusing on trying to find some creation applications. So the number of our teachers are using WeVideo and Animoto to create videos, and they're really happy with the results that they're seeing. And number one, I think before they start looking at applications, they really focus on finding collaborative applications, things that can be published to the web, and also thinking about integration with Google Drive. So I know a lot of the applications that we use are ones that integrate with Google Drive. So things like in math that we're really happy about is the advancements in GeoGebra and Desmos. So we have a lot of our teachers using Desmos, which is a free online graphing calculator. And the neat thing about that, again, is when a student creates a graph on that calculator online, it can be saved to their Google Drive. It can be shared with the teacher or with any other classmate, just like a Google Doc. The same thing with GeoGebra files, where there are geometric constructions and algebraic equations that they can then construct and manipulate online.
It's great, and yeah, I used to be one of the students who would lose my $125 graphic calculator, so I'm sure my parents would have really been happy to see Desmos. Now, Claudia, who's here next to me, I know that some of your students have particularly found some of the typing applications helpful. Could you talk a little bit more about that and any others?
As Jamie said earlier, many of us as educators are transitioning and preparing for implementation toward the Common Core. And so one of the things that we knew we wanted to start at the very, very early age was keyboarding skills. And in the Chrome Web Store, one particular keyboard app that we really, really liked as a district was is called Typing Club. And this is one particular app that students can get on a Chromebook or a PC and actually utilize this app to practice and to learn their home keys and just basic keyboarding skills. And we found that a lot of our students, when they go into the computer lab, they're using the hunt and peck method. But we all know as we move and as we transition toward the Common Core, especially students starting in 4th grade have to be able to write a one-page full composition sitting at a computer. So we knew we started in 1st grade. By the time they get to 4th grade, then they will have the skills necessary, especially keyboarding skills, to be able to compose one written composition in one sitting. So that was one definite web app that we wanted to utilize, and we're currently utilizing now. Khan Academy, I'm sure all of you have used that as well as a really good tool that allows our students to actually, on their own, self-paced, be able to go in and do videos. Another tool that we've used is ScoopPad. I've even tried that with my own daughter at home, and basically that particular web app is basically an app that provides us support in reading and math from grades kindergarten all the way up to 5th grade. So those are just some of the web apps that we have used. Now, some of the administrative apps that some of my teachers have used and some of my staff members have used, we love Remind 101. And that in itself to me is a very, very good free tool where you can set up your class to send electronic notifications and reminders to your parents. And the good news with Remind 101, there is unlimited subscribers that you can set up in a class, and it's free. And we use that as a district when we want to get news out to parents about early dismissals, or if, like last week, in South Carolina, we get a little bit of ice, everybody's kind of freaking out. So we were able to send out a reminder to our parents just to let them know that we still will have school, and yes, your child will be home at their same time. The other one that recently that we've kind of using, and I've been using personally, is Hello Sign. And Hello Sign is a godsend simply because if you're sitting at your computer, instead of you having to fax a document with your signature, you can embed your signature on a PDF document from your Gmail. And this just came out a couple of weeks ago. You can insert it back into your Gmail and then be able to send it back to the person who originally sent the PDF to you. So those are some of the tools that we use both from a classroom instructional side and also from an administrative side.
Thank you. And like Jason said, it can be overwhelming just because web-based tools are still relatively new and there's always new ones coming in, but I really encourage people to reach out to other educators. As Donna said, know what you're looking for. And then I also wanted to stress that most of these tools are free. So do make sure that, even though it's called the Chrome Web Store, a lot of these things actually don't have any cost. So now we want to hear from you all. We want to get your questions for Jesse, who's a student in Chicago, or for members of the panel who are here, the educators who are with us. And so we're going to have a roving microphone out here, and we're going to get your questions first. And then I'm going to ask actually Jamie to come up here and have a seat on the panel, take my spot. We're also going to have to, unfortunately, say goodbye to the folks who are on the live stream watching. We do need to cut the live stream at this time and keep the Q&A here in the room at FETC. So if you have tuned in, thank you so much, and we hope to see you very soon online or at another live event. So Jamie, if you wouldn't mind coming up here.
Sure. Well, they're switching. I actually have a few questions for the room. How many of you are teachers? Good, okay. Administrators? IT directors, maybe administrators as well? All right, excellent. So I bet there'll be some really good questions on PD and integration. So feel free to kick it off, and we also can help give some resources as well.
Excellent. Yeah, we are going to end before 3 o'clock to give you ample time to talk to the members of the panel or the people from the Google and Education team who are here, including Stephen, who just spoke. So we'll get the roving microphone coming around. If anybody has a question, one of the folks in the back can help you come on to the front here. And then in the meantime, there were a few questions on Google Moderator that were actually in a more technical nature. So let's maybe see if Mike wants to start us off with this.